This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is Jaydeep Korde. Jaydeep is the CEO and the founder of Launchnodes, which is all about staking on various different proof of stake blockchains. We'll learn all about that today. Welcome to the show, Jaydeep.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure. Hello. Hey, well, look, just before we launch into Launchnodes, Jaydeep, love to hear a little bit about your personal story. Please do introduce yourself and share some of your background in the lead up to founding Launchnodes.
For sure. I am an engineer, and 23 years ago, after graduating, I started working in startups, not because they were cool, but because I couldn't get a proper job. And then I was lucky enough to sell an early stage cloud computing business, and then was a consultant for a long time and did a lot of sort of early cloud and private cloud stuff. And then I worked for ThoughtWorks for a number of years, building software at sort of scale and hyperscale for governments and corporations. And then that's where I sort of stumbled into shared databases, or as some people like to call it, blockchains. And then the rest was history, I suppose, after doing some time with some banks and stuff. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Well, makes sense, Jaydeep. Then tell us the origin story of Launchnodes then. So obviously, you have a reasonably technical engineering background, I guess, and you probably, were fascinated by distributed systems such as blockchains. Why Launchnodes? What's the origin story?
I don't know. The origin story always makes me think of Wolverine, and I wish I had adamantium claws rather than just a love of distributed databases. But I think the origin was that I was very, very deeply ensconced into the optimization of how you build software at scale and hyperscale, and looking at everything from microservices to cloud native development patterns, and all of that effort was about building out a bunch of logic from one database, talking to some logic that then goes into another database. And the simple idea of there just being one database was extremely appealing. And I think that for me, the idea that then, okay, great, we've got all of this wealth that's being concentrated through the concentration of data into these big technology companies. If the data is distributed and shared, then we can all have a chance at monetizing and building wealth from this extraordinary data, from applications like, social media and Gmail and all these other things that seemed like they could easily be decentralized in 2014 and 2013. And then I think the idea that actually there's one database, and the idea that to enable it to be shared, you move away from a proof of work model to a proof of stake model. This I suppose it was a big screaming alarm bell of like, this is a magnificent idea of generating from a fixed pool of capital, generating a return in perpetuity from that through proof of stake, chains was just massively compelling. And I thought a number of my friends had gone on to be CTOs of challenger banks and work in that ecosystem. I thought, this is brilliant. But then one of the other things, I don't know if this is too long for an origin story, and I'm just rattling on now, but the other thing is that we didn't want to go and become a bank, and we wanted to learn and leverage all that we knew from cloud native development and the patterns that go with that, to ensure that when our customers were staking, they were doing it on their own infrastructure. because two things happen there. One, you then fundamentally decentralize Ethereum. And secondly, it means I don't have to go and spend $5 million on lawyers to try and apply for a banking license or a financially regulated business license. We just keep, providing the software and the professional services to enable our clients to be the stakers, and hence, our focus on solo staking rather than being a staking as a service provider.
Yeah,
is that too long for an origin story?
Jaydeep, it's not too long at all, and so we'll get into what you mean by solo staking in a minute. And in fact, you did actually touch on it a little bit, but maybe if you just kind of zoom out a little bit, Jaydeep, I'm sort of interested in your view on, I suppose, blockchains in general, or Ethereum as an ecosystem, if you like. Obviously, you've started Launchnodes as a business, and you hope that it is a profitable business. But I kind of get the sense that you believe in the vision of these decentralized blockchains and what they can potentially enable for the world, really.
No, I think that's absolutely what I believe, and I think that the kind of umbrella under which I think you can sound sane, but still purport the kind of all-encompassing change that Ethereum will deliver, in my opinion, and distributed ledger technology and shared databases will deliver, is in the idea of it being a general purpose technology, like railroads, like cars, like the internet. It changes everything. And if we come to the internet, it ends up being interesting because we can perhaps, well, certainly my age, we can remember, Andy, we'll buy a book online, but or what? I'm not going to buy a fridge online. I'm not going to give it my credit cards to book a holiday. I'm not going to sell my house online, right? I mean, there are limits to this, and people saying, "Well, I don't actually like reading my newspaper on a screen. I like doing it, physically with a cup of coffee." And the same criticisms that come to cryptocurrencies in particular don't really reflect the underlying technology. And people talk about, again, I really dislike the word blockchain. It's just all this wealth that's there in data. We really need new ways to make the opportunity to earn wealth more equitable. And so the idea that there's a shared pool of data through which we're living our lives and conducting our financial transactions acts as a great opportunity for reducing inequality, wealth creation. I'm not sure the kind of labels that if we were in 1999 and you were asking me, like, I get the impression you think the internet's going to be big. You're not just, selling email hosting servers. I think the analogy really holds well. Again, I don't know if that answers your question entirely, but it seems like a good place to start.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think then, Jaydeep, now is probably the time, to explain a little bit more about what Launchnodes is, and what you can enable for Launchnodes users, and who, I guess, who is your market? Who are you targeting with Launchnodes, and
sure.
what do you hope they will do with your services?
Yeah, I think the simple answer to that is we want to put staking into the hands of as many people as possible. And what's really interesting about that is that I think that we, through our journey, we founded in April 2020, we've realized the price of 32 Ethereum in April 2020 was, I think, less than $4,000, right? To run a full Ethereum node would cost you possibly $4,000 at the time, which isn't a tiny amount of money, but nor is it an enormous amount of money. Now, in the heart of a crypto winter, to have 32 Ethereum, it costs you $50,000+, which is a lot more of an amount of money. And our goal was that if you run your own node natively, and what does that mean? It means it sits on your infrastructure. It means you know what software client you're using. it knows what box you're using. It means that no one else can have access to that box. It means that no one else can have access to your funds, and there's no intermediary. Well, then, one, you're contributing the most value to the Ethereum network, and secondly, from our perspective, there's a really useful service we can provide in making that easy for you to do, because you might have the Ethereum, but you don't have those technical skills. And so that's what we've done, is we've built a business to avoid being a financial intermediary and running nodes on our infrastructure that you have some claim on. Rather, it's your infrastructure, whether it's in public cloud on AWS or Azure or GCP, only you can access those servers. And we just make running those nodes easy. And why that's, I think, so important is that Ethereum as a network is not a static, and even for staking and validators, it's not a static product. Even if you look at the past 2 years, Flashbots and the idea of being able to distribute the value associated with processing a block faster. Well, that didn't exist. Flashbots didn't exist 2 years ago. Now it does, and validator nodes and staking providers use it as a de facto norm. And it's only if you own your node and it runs on your infrastructure and you know what software you're using and everything is understood by you, can you start making choices in the ecosystem about what software you're going to use, about what MEV you're going to relays you're going to connect to. And as we move towards Shanghai, what we see is that the Ethereum, client teams and the core dev team have really baked into the idea that you running your own nodes and not having a financial intermediary is what good looks like.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I presume then you would have been following the merge, Ethereum's move to proof of stake very closely, and obviously been a supporter of that, Jaydeep.
Yeah, massively so. And I think that the bit about that, and I did say at the time we held a little merge party in London, is that they'll make movies about it in terms of the way we make software right now. When a change goes into Gmail or Zoom, and many happen every day, right? They go into production. There's a boss, there's an organizational structure, there's all this stuff that makes that happen. The Ethereum merge was using, not no tooling or ideas from software development in the past, but this totally incredible idea of a decentralized team working on something, so complex, so new, and that's moving at the kind of speed it's moving at in terms of the amount of value and transactions locked on Ethereum. It was an incredible achievement, and the fact that it went successfully is a real moment in history, I think.
For sure it is. And well, how do you think about proof of work versus proof of stake then, Jaydeep?
Well, I think I'm actually a bit perhaps more forgiving on proof of work than many. I think that it is an energy abomination that so much is used. But then I think if I think of innovative technologies, they don't necessarily. It's an unintended consequence, and one that will improve. And I think that it probably is improving every day in terms of Bitcoin miners wanting to use renewable sources, make what they're doing more sustainable. And I think to get to Ethereum, you had to start with proof of work, and so I think it's just part of that stepping stone. But just as we don't use coal to power trains anymore, I don't think we will in the long term need proof of work to power blockchains.
Okay, well, and so in the context of that then, just I guess layman's terms, I mean, people kind of understand this stuff a little bit, but it's good to hear it from people such as yourself. Tell us why it's important for users to act as validators on the Ethereum proof of stake consensus model, and why people should look at your staking services. Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that we're really keen to do when we talk to customers and try and bring them to the value of becoming a solo staker with us is that this isn't a magic piggy bank, right? You don't get 32 Ethereum and give it to me and then I magically give you returns. There is a new type of work to be done. Like what is a staking return? A staking return is a reward for you putting your capital onto a node and saying, when the database needs updating, I promise to be available and I promise to update it with good data and not attack the network. And for being available, for doing the work of updating the database with a valid transaction, you're rewarded in money, right? So to facilitate a shared database, you have to incentivize good sharing. And to do that, from that, the cryptocurrency emerges. So with that idea of like, okay, it's not a magic piggy bank, it's not mystical, crypto gods showering rewards on you. It's a form of work that you're doing. It's automated with your node. We say, why not do it yourself and own that node and have all the choices that are going to be important in an open, evolving ecosystem, rather than pretending that it's fixed and all that staking is a financial outcome, and give your 32 or 3,200 ETH to me and I'll give you 4%. Don't worry about any of the technical nonsense. You don't need to know what software it is. You don't need to know about all the different component parts of that ecosystem. That's just boring. You just want 4%. Now, I think that has been true, but I think as the network evolves and we move away from this kind of static 2-year period where you couldn't take your Ethereum off, and in that time, liquid staking options like Lido proved very popular. And I also feel that this is one of the things that's really important is that within the ecosystem, solo staking is great for those who have 32 ETH or more. But Lido is providing a fantastically useful service for people who have got less than 32 ETH. And I think that's I don't believe that it's one size fits all for everyone. And for retail customers, I think potentially that there is an argument that says maybe you do just want 4%. You don't want that technical hassle. But our target market really is businesses, and those businesses are both traditional financial services businesses as well as new crypto businesses who want to have direct access to staking on infrastructure they own, right? As well as data, and we provide those RPC nodes that allow you to stop having to use third-party APIs and endpoints, and you can use you can run your own RPC nodes with us really easily. So that's our case that we make to customers. We're talking about that ecosystem that's evolving. We also see that this idea of a staking, a node that's doing staking, producing this income off a fixed pool of capital. It's a really powerful tool for solving long-term financing problems in different situations, like school connectivity in developing countries. And so we've worked with the Ethereum Foundation and UNICEF to use a staking node to try and fund internet connectivity. We've paid for tablets and maternity software for refugee camps with staking returns with Save the Children. Because guess what? We're not giving away the principal, we're giving away the staking return. And that staking return is growing with the success and scaling of the Ethereum network, which, if you believe it's going to be a general purpose technology, is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and I suppose what you're talking about there, Jaydeep, is what you call impact staking. All right. So
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, you give it what? Yeah. So give us the definition of what you mean by impact staking, and you can talk more about that, how that works.
Well, you basically take the money pipe that is staking. So we talked about this new type of work that you do with a node that's automated, and the wealth generated from that node and the earning potential is a function of how busy and popular is Ethereum. And how much are people wanting to write to that shared database, so that these validators have work. But then, it's very simple, isn't it? That if that return is perpetual, you could start using it to finance sort of complex long-term problems that I don't think anyone disagrees with, that they need money. It's just a case of where do you get that money and how do you get that money for the long term? And so we've started looking at use cases whereby the impact from being able to financing something long term, like a school internet connection, is, the cost of an internet connection hopefully is going down every 6-12 months, whereas the staking return is hopefully moving upwards. And again, I think that rather than this being work that's completed and finished, we want to experiment in this space. We want to build in this space. And so we work with UNICEF. We work with Save the Children. We're working with other organisations to try and build out solutions that have not only the technical bit of actually earning the money and getting it off, but then managing the financial model and risk. Because if you're paying for internet connectivity with Ethereum returns and Ethereum falls by 80% in value, or have you just basically ruined the educational opportunity of every kid who's dependent on Ethereum being at $3,000?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky one, isn't it? So, because you think there is potentially a huge, massive, untapped pool of potential businesses and charities and schools and all kinds of organisations around the world that might have a bit of capital, and if someone says to them, well, consider putting a little bit of that capital into Ethereum, and then essentially, set up a solo staking through an organization such as yourself, and they've got like an AWS, something like that. So they've got the cloud infrastructure there, and it's that potential perpetual income stream, which of course is very attractive. But I suppose the risk is, as you pointed out, is, what happens to the wider crypto market in the meantime. But I suppose as long as you have that kind of long-term vision or enter at the right time, those things tend to balance out over time.
Yeah, and I think again, big hedging strategies, when you're not looking at one node or two nodes, but you're looking at trying to build a port with staking returns rather than issuing debt. Well, that's actually really interesting, isn't it? Because if I can hedge the price of Ethereum, using futures contracts and using very traditional financial modeling methods on that, and maybe say you can't get 100% hedge, but you can get a 90 and 85% hedge. Well, then a country like Sri Lanka can get its port built on staking returns without someone needing to give a principal over and hope that the port works out and it builds out okay. Rather, these staking returns are appointed at the port being built, and providing these milestones ahead, the money keeps coming. And I think that the real scale of opportunity around that is something that we believe in fundamentally, because it's not only about the idea that the school is getting its internet connection paid, but it's also that internet connection and the ISP who's getting the money has to give us data, or has to give the public data about how good was that internet connection? What was the ping time? What was the uptime? What was the bandwidth up and down? And that data allows you to be like, well, actually, we're funding this for the long term, but are you delivering, right? And moving away from kind of subjective analysis, but kind of really sort of quantitative sort of metrics where possible. I mean, it's not possible every time. I think really lends itself to impact staking really well. So yeah, I think it's a space we're really excited in, and we'll see really sort of quite large scale adoption over the coming years.
How do you see that adoption happening though, Jaydeep? Because I can understand, the attraction of services such as yours for certainly any existing crypto business, no brainer, of course, and then perhaps some, technology businesses as well. But once you kind of start talking about schools and developing countries, how do they cross the chasm? How do they get the information necessary to take the plunge, if you like?
Well, I think we're trying to build out a lot of open source material and IP around that, and the UNICEF project has that in Giga. we were their implementation partner, and they have made all the work open source and available. But Andy, let's ask this question, right? So if you're a donor and you're looking to support internet connectivity in rural schools, either in East Africa, Rwanda, where I'm based, or perhaps in deprived communities in New Zealand. What impact staking does is it says, well, actually, how about I get my principal back after 3 years, and I'll donate the staking returns. And so that idea that you're not giving away your principal acts as an incentive, I think, for people to try it, really. And I think the charities that are looking to try and solve complex problems over the long term can use this as a tool to say, look, support us for 3 years, but then get your money back at the end of that. And so what you're losing here is the opportunity cost. And I think that means that people, and we're seeing that people are really interested in that model, and it means that the donor will be interested, and the charities and organizations doing good work are very much focused on how they make their work appealing to donors and relevant and viable. And again, I think in climate change, the idea that you're running nodes and you're planting trees with the staking returns over a longer period of time, rather than simply, one tree, one time. And as an organization, organizations like Treedom can, build your virtual forest with all this data, means that I think impact staking sits in an existing ecosystem of people trying to drive social outcomes in climate change, in inequality, in building new infrastructure. And I think this is just a new tool. I don't think there's any silver bullet to it, or it's the only thing that matters, but it's a useful tool. It's kind of money pipe that can flow long term. And I think that we see that adoption and interest across the piece, right?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And there's certainly a story to tell, a narrative to unfold, and it certainly does seem the way the world is heading. We've talked a bit about Ethereum, Jaydeep, but Launchnodes also provides node hosting and staking services for some other blockchains as well. Yeah, we do for ranging from Cardano, Tezos, Solana, Avalanche, and Cosmos, and a whole bunch of others. And actually, we have got really great experience, and it's been fantastic learning about those blockchains through business clients and institutional clients. Because again, the difference and why it's why we've been useful to our clients is because they've wanted to own the infrastructure. They want to learn about those blockchains. They want to understand the IP. They don't simply want to just hand over money and then expect a financial outcome. And because of that, it allows us to work with engineering teams and support them and lighten their load. And also see the maturity of chains evolve over the years. And I think that it is good to see that chains are evolving in terms of the quality of the software that they're producing, the software development lifecycle, the practices, the frequency of the releases, the stability of those releases, and what I kind of think it's a little bit like is seeing these different kids learn to walk and crawl and run at different rates and having different talents. And we have built on all blockchains, and I've built on them since 2014 and got very excited about things like Neo and EOS and to name but a few. And one of the problems I think has been for some of these chains is that once you get an ICO, and your development team are each, worth $50 million each, coming in on Monday morning and having donuts for everyone to start getting excited about what features they're going to deliver this week and how many development points they're going to get done. I think it's a bit tricky. And so the heuristics of what
has happened with a lot of these chains in terms of the enormous amounts of hype and profits and money that's been made has kind of put software development at the back burner a little bit. And in this time of a winter, crypto winter, it's good to see people being able to focus on building and doing that hard work.
Yeah, I mean, and look, you've kind of answered the question already, Jaydeep, but what is there a kind of evaluation process you go through when you add a new chain to Launchnodes? Bearing what you've just said.
No, I think we want to enable. So we've got, I think the top 15 coins we offer by default, and there's the pretty standard price list and a model for those. But I think I'm not opposed to the idea that there's a new chain, it's got utility, and someone wants to invest in it. I mean, it's a proof of stake chain. Obviously, we don't work with proof of work chains. We'll look at it. We'll consider it. We'll understand its makeup and what it's trying to do, and allow our clients to run nodes on their own infrastructures to support that. And I think that's really important. And I think we're partnering with companies like Fortanix, who are really, really serious players in the cryptographic space, to combine the key management and process workflow around keys for Cosmos chains, and combining that with us providing the nodes. And so I think whilst Ethereum has run a long way ahead in terms of the quality of tooling, the development community, and the maturity of their software development process, anyone who's trying to build useful working software and get it into production has my support, and Launchnodes will support anyone who wants nodes to decentralize their blockchain.
Very nicely said. All right. Well, as we start to finish off, Jaydeep, just I don't know what's coming up. How do you see Launchnodes evolving over the next few years, and what are you working on? What are you excited by?
Well, I think, Andy, it's interesting because I think that our model of staking, solo staking, has not been fashionable over the past 2 years in this lock-in period. I think people have been more like, I don't care, I'm not going to get the profits anyway. I'm just going to give it to, whether it's Lido, whether it's a staking as a service provider, I'll get my 4% and I don't have to worry about it. I think Shanghai is something that really is it's another really big and important shift in what Ethereum is, the capital that comes into it, and the different tooling and ecosystem services that are going to be around it. And the idea of staking, when you've got 32 or multiples of 32 Ethereum, and it not being on your own infrastructure, and you not being able to access that ecosystem natively of different services and choices, of how you earn, on what infrastructure you run your nodes, what choices are you making about MEV Boost, what other opportunities will exist in terms of securitizing nodes, securitizing the earnings that come off nodes. I think there's just going to be a massive, flood of capital into Ethereum and into solo staking. I think that capital, from whether it's traditional FI or whether it's crypto, will want to own the IP and the infrastructure, not because of everything that's available today, but because the network is changing and evolving, and the opportunities to earn will reside with the solo staker. And the Ethereum core dev team and the client teams have kind of made that clear in what Shanghai proposes, and how withdrawals and the structure of that is going to be laid out. So, yeah, I think we're in the short term, we're really excited about Shanghai. In the medium and long term, as we see Ethereum become a general purpose technology, again, I think the idea of nodes being the most important component part of a blockchain and Ethereum is only going to become more the case if that's a sentence. It doesn't sound like a good sentence, but
and
you know
just,
what I mean.
yeah, we do. And just to finish, JD, it's probably be good, because you've referred to Shanghai a few times, and so that is the Ethereum update that is, or upgrade, whatever you want to call it. So that's just been pushed to mid-April, I think. But that is essentially when ETH stakers are able to get access to their.
Has that been
ETH
made
again.
official? I sort of, I did know it was April in my head, but I didn't know if that was official yet.
I don't know if it's official either. I'm just today? Just I can see.
No. I think it is.
Yeah,
I think it is. I think it. I mean, to me, it's very possible that it is, and I think that again, what is it about? What's the main thing about Shanghai? The main thing about Shanghai is that Ethereum validators who have had to lock their Ethereum onto the network will be able to withdraw their funds, withdraw the profits, which is going to be called skimming, and withdraw their initial principal, which is going to be called unstaking. And the process by which that happens is being outlined right now and being built, and it's quite complicated. And one of the reasons why it's more complicated perhaps than it should be is because there are so many intermediaries in the space, in the form of liquid staking providers and in the form of staking as a service providers, rather than people owning their own nodes, owning their own mnemonics and keys, and being able to get this new execution layer address from which they'll be able to get their withdrawals. And so Shanghai's a really big deal, and it fundamentally favors solo staking.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts today, Jaydeep. Just as we finish off, please tell people where they should go if they want to learn more about Launchnodes, solo staking, impact staking, all that good stuff. What should they do? www.launchnodes.com. We're super simple, and you can from there you can join Discord and Telegram channels, and you can also look at how you run nodes on your own AWS infrastructure in AWS Marketplace, where we have a whole bunch of consultancy services and solo staking nodes that we sell. If you want to run nodes on your tin, as it were. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jaydeep. All the best, and bye for now.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Andy.
All right, there you go. That was Jaydeep from Launchnodes. And it does look like the Ethereum Shanghai upgrade has been pushed to mid-April. Lots of chatter around that, of course, just more from traders as to what happens to the price of Ethereum when all that staked Ethereum is available again. Do people look to offload some of their positions? I don't know. It doesn't really matter in the long term, does it? But fun market commentary in the meantime. Hope you enjoyed the show today, team. That is the end of another episode. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave New Coin.